Hello everyone, welcome to a video on our third macroeconomic objective, that of full employment. What I want you to do first is to define an unemployed person. So I want you to pause the video and just write out what you consider an unemployed person to be. Okay, so just pause and do that. Okay, I will assume you have done it. Your answers will vary, but I will now give you our definition. The unemployment is people of working age who are without work and are actively seeking employment. This is the key issue it's the key component of this that people don't intuitively understand, that you are only unemployed if you are actually looking for work. It becomes a bit more sensical once we look at examples of people who aren't unemployed yet who don't have jobs. So, first example, these are my two kids. A few years old, he's probably about 6, he's probably about 3 or 4. They don't have jobs, but nor are they considered unemployed. So they're not part of the unemployment rate in Australia. They don't have jobs because they're not of working age. They're in full-time education. That's completely fine. Another category. These two people, this is my mum and dad. So they are also not unemployed. They don't have jobs anymore. They spend most of their time at the bowling club. They're not unemployed because they are not actively seeking employment. They are retired. How do we calculate the unemployment rate? We have an equation to use. So we count up the number of unemployed people and we divide that by the total labour force. So the labour force is everyone who is trying to engage in work. So everyone who either has a job or doesn't have a job but is actively seeking a job. And we get that times 100. So we will do a little example here. So we're going to look at the country of Burmistan. That's a flag of Burmistan, I guess. Population, 35.5 million. And we've got some other stats here. I want you to just pause and try to work out what the unemployment rate is. Okay, I will assume you have done that. The unemployment rate is the unemployed, 1.4 million, over the total labour force. So that is these three categories added together. The population is irrelevant, right? Completely irrelevant. We only care about the labour force. So that is people that have jobs. So part-time workers and full-time workers, they both have jobs, so they count, and the unemployed. So we work out an unemployment rate of 8.1%. So again, I don't think they'll ever ask you to do this calculation, but I really just want people to understand that population is not part of the calculation, because it's the first thing people want to use. I want to do unemployed people divided by population. But misconception, but it is wrong. Okay, the labour force. This sort of breaks it down a little bit more. So probably don't get this down in your notes just yet. Wait until I've explained it and then do it, because you've got to draw it properly. Okay, so we have the entire population. We've got population over the working age, so say 15. Employed persons, they're definitely part of the labour force, right? Full-time workers, part-time workers, they've got jobs, they're part of the labour force. People not employed. So notice I haven't said unemployed, because our definition of that is a bit more refined, isn't it? So persons not employed, those who are actively seeking work, they are part of the labour force. Those not actively seeking work are not. Population under 15, not part of the labour force. So essentially, here's how this breaks it down. Out of the entire population, there is a proportion who are in the labour force, there is a proportion who aren't. Population over 15, proportion in the labour force, proportion who are not. Some of those people over 15 don't have jobs, but they are actively seeking. So they are in the labour force. those who are not seeking work are not in the labour force. So this is where, when you would get this diagram down, it's a little thing we can refer to work out who is employed, who is not employed, who is in the labour force, who is not in the labour force. So there are a bunch of people, categories in society that aren't included in the labour force, and it might be easier to look at them as separate categories rather than as part of this, just to really get our head around who is and who isn't included. So these groups, not included, so not part of the unemployment rate, permanently unable to work. So you might be disabled, you might be a carer, a full-time carer for a family member, right? If you're retired, doesn't count. Full-time student, doesn't count. Full-time parent, you're probably not looking for work, so stay-at-home mum or dad, they're not counted. If you're just traveling around, again, it's really just another way to say you're not looking for work, right? So if I go to Spain for a few months and travel around, I'm not looking for work over there. I'm just traveling. I don't count as unemployed in their statistics. If you're in prison, you can't work. You can't get a job, so you can't actively seek a job. If you're part of some religious order that doesn't allow you to work, again, you're not seeking. And people who give up seeking work, this happens. They just give up. They're what we call discouraged workers. They give up seeking jobs. Okay, back to our objective. So we want the lowest rate of unemployment obtainable without accelerating inflation, because a really low unemployment rate is going to increase inflation. So full employment is achieved when the unemployment rate is equal to the natural rate. Now, again, we don't know what the natural rate is, so we will look at that. Indicator is the unemployment rate. We've worked out what that means, how to calculate it. And we do have a target. So in Australia, what we call the natural rate of unemployment is estimated to be 4.5%. So out of the total labour force, 4.5% being unemployed is what we consider normal, right? It's the natural rate of unemployment. There are always going to be those people unemployed. So it's always going to be around that mark. Sometimes we'll dip under. Most of the times we'll be at or above 4.5%. And that is what we aim for. So it comes as a surprise to people that we do not aim for 0% unemployment. That is not what we look for. It's 4.5%. There we go. Full employment is not when unemployment is at 0%. So there will always be unemployed people. We get into the reasons behind that more in year 12, but I'll talk you through that in class. So 4.5% natural rate. Anything below that, it risks accelerating inflation. And here is why. If we have a low unemployment rate, it's because there's more jobs, generally. More jobs equals more income. Higher income, right? That's one of our non-price determinants of demand, isn't it? So the more income people have, the more they demand goods and services, right? The demand for goods and services, we've seen that in microeconomics. You increase demand for a good, price goes up. You put upward pressure on the price. So that's going to increase inflation. The more jobs that we have, so the lower unemployment rate we have, that risks putting prices up. Okay, and there are just a couple of other indicators which we tend to look at as well. So we're going to introduce you to them very briefly so you get them into your notes. We have what's called the underemployment rate. So that's the number of employed people wishing to work more. So they might be a part-time worker working 15 hours a week, but they're trying to support a family. They want to work full-time or even just 30 hours a week. So we try to measure that as well. And the labour force participation rate. So of the working age population, what proportion of that population is actually either got a job or looking for a job, right? That's important. We want to know that information. So both of these indicators are used to show the level of labour utilisation in the country. So how much are we using labour? We want to know these things. All right, that is all we are going to do in this lesson. So make sure you've taken good notes and we're all good. See ya.